Welcome to Truth Report, where we peel back the layers of official narratives to expose the hidden truths impacting our fundamental rights. Tonight, we investigate how institutions charged with protecting us are quietly being reshaped, how dissent is being stifled, and how basic constitutional promises are being broken.
From a federal agency tasked with combating discrimination hiring a lawyer with a controversial past, to the alarming arrest of a witness who dared to contradict a government account, and finally, to a state failing its children by neglecting its constitutional duty to fund education. These aren't isolated incidents, but symptoms of a deeper erosion of trust and accountability.
We'll connect the dots, revealing how these seemingly disparate stories converge on a singular, troubling pattern, the quiet subversion of rights and the direct challenges to justice within our own systems. Prepare for an unflinching look at the power dynamics at play and the profound implications for every citizen.
In each case tonight, we see individuals and communities fighting for their rights against powerful entities, whether it's the federal government, local law enforcement, or state legislatures. It's a battle for fairness, transparency, and the very future of our democratic principles.
Join us as we shine a light on these critical issues, holding power accountable and giving voice to those caught in the crosshairs. This is Truth Report, and the truth, as always, is far more complex than it appears on the surface. Our first story takes us inside a federal agency, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or EEOC, an institution foundational to civil rights enforcement in the United States. Its mission is clear: to prevent and remedy unlawful employment discrimination.
Yet, as reported by the Intercept, the EEOC quietly hired an attorney in 2025 whose personal and professional history raises serious questions about the agency's commitment to its stated mission. This attorney, Benjamin North, previously crusaded for cases of discrimination against men, including his own.
North's past advocacy focused heavily on what he perceived as widespread discrimination against men in the handling of campus sexual assault allegations. This isn't just a personal opinion. He based this stance on his own experience facing an allegation in college, becoming a vocal proponent for men's rights in this contentious area.
This is critical, Alex. The EEOC handles Title VII and, indirectly, Title IX issues related to education, often dealing with sexual harassment and assault complaints. Bringing in someone with North's specific, deeply ingrained perspective that campus sexual assault claims are often discriminatory against men, creates an undeniable tension with the agency's primary function of protecting victims, who are overwhelmingly women.
Indeed, the Intercept's reporting highlights that North's hiring was done quietly, suggesting a lack of transparency that only amplifies concerns. Why would a federal agency, whose mandate is to ensure equity, bring aboard an individual whose public advocacy history could be seen as directly at odds with, or at least highly skeptical of, protections for survivors of sexual assault?
The implication here is profound. It's not just about one lawyer, it's about the signal this sends. For individuals, predominantly women, who come to the EEOC seeking justice for sexual harassment or assault, North's presence could create a chilling effect. It could foster an environment where victims fear their complaints will be met with skepticism or even hostility from within the agency itself.
And the potential for internal bias cannot be overstated. An attorney's personal convictions, especially when they stem from direct personal experience and subsequent public advocacy, could subtly or overtly influence how cases are investigated, pursued, or dismissed. This directly impacts the EEOC's integrity and its ability to act as a neutral arbiter.
Who ultimately benefits from such a hiring? Certainly, those who believe that existing anti-discrimination frameworks, particularly those addressing sexual misconduct, have gone too far in protecting women, or have unfairly targeted men. It lends a veneer of legitimacy to men's rights narratives within a federal enforcement body.
Conversely, the losers are clear: victims of sexual harassment and assault, who depend on agencies like the EEOC to be unbiased champions for their rights. The public also loses trust in the impartiality and efficacy of a critical federal agency, eroding the very foundation of its mission.
This situation reflects a broader pushback against advancements in civil rights, particularly in the wake of movements like #MeToo. It's a strategic insertion of a specific ideology into a powerful bureaucratic structure, potentially redirecting the focus and resources of an agency meant to protect the vulnerable.
It's a subtle but significant shift. By quietly integrating individuals with such specific, controversial viewpoints into the very fabric of enforcement agencies, the power structures that determine whose rights are prioritized and whose claims are validated begin to morph, often to the detriment of historically marginalized groups.
The question we must ask is this an isolated oversight, or part of a calculated strategy to subtly undermine federal civil rights enforcement from within? The lack of transparency around North's hiring suggests the latter, raising serious alarms about accountability at the highest levels of government.
Our next story unveils a disturbing pattern of federal overreach and potential witness intimidation. It takes us to Minneapolis, where a man found himself apprehended by federal agents at the scene of a fatal shooting, not because he was a suspect, but because he had previously contradicted the government's narrative about an earlier incident.
According to the Intercept's reporting, this individual, whom we'll call Mr. Smith to protect his identity, was present at the scene where Alex Pretti was killed. What makes his detention so alarming is his history. He had publicly disputed the official account of a prior shooting, putting him at odds with federal authorities.
The scene described is stark: Mr. Smith, a civilian, pinned to the ground and detained by federal agents in the immediate aftermath of a highly sensitive and public killing. This isn't just a simple arrest, it's an aggressive, visible act that sends a powerful message, especially to anyone else who might consider speaking out.
This is a textbook example of how state power can be used to silence dissent and control narratives. When a witness who offers a contradictory account is then targeted and detained, it creates a chilling effect on free speech and the willingness of ordinary citizens to come forward with information that might challenge official stories.
The implications for due process and the integrity of justice are profound. Was there genuine probable cause for Mr. Smith's arrest at the Pretti scene, or was it a retaliatory measure designed to intimidate him and others from challenging federal accounts? The reporting strongly suggests the latter, given his prior history.
This kind of action fundamentally undermines the judicial process. For a fair trial or a proper investigation to occur, witnesses must feel safe to provide truthful testimony without fear of reprisal. When federal agents target individuals who speak inconvenient truths, it poisons the well of justice.
Who benefits from such heavy-handed tactics? Clearly, law enforcement and government agencies who wish to maintain a singular, unchallenged narrative, especially in high-profile or politically sensitive cases. Controlling the flow of information and suppressing alternative viewpoints serves to insulate official accounts from scrutiny.
And who loses? Mr. Smith, for one, whose rights to free speech and to witness an event without fear of arbitrary detention were violated. But more broadly, the public loses. We lose the ability to fully understand events when alternative perspectives are suppressed, and our faith in the impartiality of law enforcement is eroded.
This incident connects to a worrying pattern of targeting activists, journalists, and everyday citizens who challenge authority or expose uncomfortable truths. It's a mechanism of control, where the very institutions meant to protect civil liberties are used to suppress them.
It's a stark reminder of the power imbalance between the individual and the state. When the government can use its immense resources to intimidate witnesses and silence critical voices, it creates an environment where accountability becomes almost impossible to achieve. This is not just about one man, it's about the sanctity of our democratic right to truth and open discourse.
The question here is not just about the legality of Mr. Smith's detention, but the chilling message it sends. How many other witnesses, fearing similar repercussions, will now choose to remain silent, allowing official narratives, however incomplete or inaccurate, to stand unchallenged? The cost to transparency and justice is immeasurable. Our third story turns to the fundamental right of education, focusing on a critical battle brewing in Alaska. 2 school districts are suing the state, asserting that Alaska is failing its constitutional obligation to adequately fund public education. This isn't just a local dispute, it's a direct challenge to the state's commitment to its youngest citizens.
ProPublica reports on this crucial lawsuit, which highlights a deepening crisis in Alaska's public school system. The core argument is simple yet powerful. The state constitution mandates that Alaska provide for a robust system of public education, a mandate that these districts claim is being systematically neglected.
Alaska is often seen as a resource-rich state, particularly due to its oil revenues. The fact that school districts are forced to sue over inadequate funding suggests a profound misallocation of resources or a deliberate political choice to deprioritize education, rather than an inherent lack of funds.
This isn't just about budget shortfalls, it's about the long-term health and equity of the state. Underfunded schools directly impact students' ability to learn, access resources, and ultimately, to succeed in life. It creates an unequal playing field, particularly for students in rural and lower-income communities who rely entirely on public education.
The state's failure to uphold its constitutional obligation translates directly into larger class sizes, fewer specialized programs, outdated materials, and difficulties attracting and retaining qualified teachers. These are not minor inconveniences, they are systemic barriers to quality education for thousands of children.
From a rights perspective, this is a violation of the promise made to every child under the state constitution. Education is not merely a privilege, it's a fundamental pathway to opportunity, citizenship, and personal development. Denying adequate funding is denying future generations their full potential.
Who benefits from this underfunding? Potentially, those who advocate for lower taxes, or for redirecting state funds to other areas they deem more politically expedient. There may also be a benefit to private education interests if public schools are allowed to deteriorate, creating a perceived need for alternatives.
and the losers are unequivocally the students, their families, and the educators dedicated to their success. But the loss extends beyond the classroom. It's a loss for Alaska's future workforce, its economic competitiveness, and the overall social fabric of its communities.
This lawsuit underscores a troubling national trend where state governments often prioritize other spending, or are unwilling to raise sufficient revenue, leaving public education to suffer. It forces the judiciary to step in and remind the legislative and executive branches of their constitutional duties.
It's a critical moment for judicial oversight, as the courts are often the last resort when legislative bodies fail to act responsibly or constitutionally. The outcome of this case in Alaska could set a significant precedent for other states facing similar challenges in fulfilling their educational mandates.
This struggle reveals the power dynamics at play between state government and its citizens. When the state fails to provide fundamental services, citizens are left with no choice but to challenge the very institutions meant to represent them, often at great financial and emotional cost.
The fight for adequate education funding is a fight for basic equity and the future. It calls into question the priorities of state leadership and demands accountability for ensuring that every child, regardless of their zip code, has access to the quality education they are constitutionally guaranteed.
Looking across these three distinct stories, a chilling pattern emerges. We see a quiet, yet persistent, erosion of fundamental rights and the accountability of powerful institutions. From the EEOC to federal law enforcement and the state of Alaska, the promise of justice and protection is being undermined.
Indeed, Alex. In each case, a government body or agency is either acting against its stated mission or failing to uphold its constitutional duties. The EEOC, tasked with anti-discrimination, hires an attorney whose advocacy has challenged traditional interpretations of discrimination protections for women. Federal agents, meant to uphold justice, intimidate a witness whose testimony contradicts their narrative.
And the state of Alaska, constitutionally bound to provide public education, is actively failing its children, forcing districts to sue. What unites these stories is a systemic challenge to established norms, a pushback against protections, and a fundamental disregard for the very people these institutions are meant to serve.
It's a narrative of diminishing transparency and accountability. The quiet hiring at the EEOC, the aggressive, unexplained detention of a witness, and the long-standing neglect of education funding all point to decisions made behind closed doors, or through inaction, that profoundly impact public trust and individual liberties.
The power structures at play are clear: federal agencies flexing their authority to shape internal policy or control information, state governments prioritizing budgets over constitutional obligations. In each instance, the individual, whether a victim of discrimination, an eyewitness, or a student, is left vulnerable, fighting an uphill battle against immense institutional power.
These aren't just isolated incidents of bureaucratic missteps. They represent a concerning trend where the integrity of our institutions is being compromised, and the rights of citizens are being quietly, yet systematically, chipped away. It demands our vigilance and our unwavering commitment to holding power accountable.
The stories we've covered tonight highlight a critical juncture for our society. When the very institutions designed to protect rights become ambiguous in their mission, or actively suppress truth, the fabric of our democracy is weakened. We must demand transparency and accountability from all levels of government.
Your engagement is vital. We encourage you to research these stories further, to understand the implications for your own communities, and to hold your elected officials and appointed leaders responsible. Speak up when you see injustice, and support organizations that champion human rights and governmental integrity.
The truth, as always, is rarely simple, and it often requires us to look beyond the headlines and into the systemic issues. It's a continuous fight for fairness, equity, and justice. We hope tonight's report empowers you to join that fight.
Thank you for joining us on Truth Report. We'll continue to investigate, to question, and to bring you the stories that matter most. Good night.